In this video we'll show how you can create data-driven forms in a UX component. So a data-driven form is a UX component that displays a form where the fields on the form are determined at runtime, typically by making a query against a database. This is in contrast with the normal way in which a UX component form would be built, where the fields in the form are decided at design time. So let's start out now and look at a pre-built component. So we'll go now and we'll create a new UX component, and we'll choose from the list of available templates here this data-driven forms template. So we'll go ahead there and select the component, and you can see here that the template here is essentially a viewbox control that displays the actual form itself, and then a series of editors in an editor set. So we have a whole bunch of editors here which are used to edit the values in the form. So let's go now and actually run this form and then go back and describe how it was built. So I'm going to go now into working preview mode. So we'll go there now and switch over into working preview. And we can see now that when we press this button over here, we're going to make an AJAX callback, and then the server is going to send back the form definition that we want to use. So it's going to send back a list of all the fields that the form should display and information about how each of those fields should be edited. So I'm going to go then say get form definition, and then you can see here we basically are now looking at the form definition that was sent back by the server. So the form basically has a number of questions on it, a number of fields, and I can go ahead now and start filling in the fields. So the first field here is date value 1, and for this field we're going to use a date editor. So we have 3 spin lists in this editor, one for month, day and year. So we'll just click the today button, and then we'll just change the date to say July 23rd, hit the save button, and you can see now we've set the value for this first field. The next field is a switch, so we'll just go set the value there directly. Then we have a time field, and we'll just choose the button that sets the time now, so it's 2:09 p.m. Then we have a signature field, so we'll tap over there and we'll just go and sign that. And so now there's our signature. The next field is just a text field, so we can go here and we can start typing in the value, but you'll see here that for this particular field, instead of bringing up the native keyboard, we've created a keyboard control of our own. And on a phone where there's not enough space, we basically are making each button do triple duty. So when I tap on this button over here, I can then slide my mouse to select the actual key that I want. So let's go there and go ahead and choose that, and then I can switch to the numeric keypad and start adding additional values. Now if we were on a tablet, then we would have a wider keyboard and there would be no need to have each key do triple duty. So we'll go there now and hit save, and then we'll get now to our next field. So here's our comments field over here, so we can go there and type in some long text over there. So go ahead and there and hit save. Then the next field that we have is a integer field, and you can see that this particular field you can set the value by just pressing on the plus and minus values. You'll also notice that some of the fields we've chosen to put icons to the left of the field label, and we've also grouped the fields into different subgroups. So these fields here are in group 1, and then these fields here are in group 2. So here we have a formatted string, and we can go there and choose some values, and you can see that basically the control shows an underbar showing where additional values could be filled in. Then we have a list control over here, and we'll go and choose Italian. Then we have another text value where we can type in some value, and you can see for this particular field we've specified some help text that we'd like to see underneath the control. So we'll go back there. Then we have a mobile phone number field, and again we've chosen to use a custom keyboard, so we'll go there and type in 61766 5. So So we're continuing now with our video on data-driven forms, and so here we are on our phone number field, and we've entered a phone number using the numeric keypad here, and then when we go back to the form we see the mobile phone number entered over here. If I just tap on it again, I can go back and edit it. If we continue now looking at our form, we see now we have another heading over here, and then we have another group called group 3, and here we have a radio button control, so I'll go ahead and set alpha. Then we're prompting here for a dollar amount, and again we're going to use a numeric keyboard, and you can see that as we enter the value, the number is formatted with a dollar sign over there, and then we have a negative number, so we'll type in 23 and we'll change the sign to a negative number, and again we're using our numeric keypad, and in this case we've configured the numeric keypad to allow the plus minus button so the user can change the sign of the number that was entered. So at this point we've basically filled in a whole bunch of fields in our form, and we're ready to submit the data. So when I press the submit button here, the form is going to be submitted to the server, and I have a debug1 statement in the after submit code so we can see what got submitted to the server. So I'll go ahead there and press the submit button, and we can see that what got submitted was, if we go here and look at e.data submitted, basically one of the fields that got submitted is this field called VB1. That's the view box that was used to actually implement the form, and you can see that the data in the view box is just JSON data. So if we copy this data to the clipboard and then go and reformat it in Alpha so we can see it more easily, let's just go there, close that down, go over in Alpha to the a code editor here, paste in that JSON, and then use the showvar JSON function in XBasic to look at the JSON in a nicely formatted way. We can see that here are all of the fields that were collected in the form in a JSON format. So the first field was called date 1, and there's the value. The next field was item 2, and there's its value. This long field over here is the ink for the signature. You can see here that here are the notes that we entered. That's the long text. Then we selected Italian from the list control, etc. So basically all of the data that was collected by the form is submitted to the server in a JSON format. But not only can we submit data from the form to the server, but we can also set the initial values or set values in the form. So if we go now and run this form, we can see now that when we run the form basically doesn't have any value set. But if I go ahead here and tap on this button here, I'm going to execute some JavaScript to set the value in the form. So you can see we've set a value there in the date field. We've set the switch to be true. We've set a time value, we've set some values in this text field, and this text field we've set this integer value to 6. In this formatted string we've set the value there, and then in the list we've chosen the value of German, and then for the phone number we've set the default value over there, and we've chosen the alpha button, the alpha value in the radio button. So the way that we set the value in the control is just by using the standard set value method that the UX component has, and the value that we set the form to is a JSON version of the data in the form. So if we go back into the form itself and look here at JavaScript Functions, this is the function that we used to set the value in the form. So we have here a JavaScript object that has all of the values that we would like to populate the form with, and then we just simply call the set value method on the viewbox control, and the value that we set the viewbox control to is the JSON version of this object over there. So we call JSON stringify, and then we set the value of the form. So what we've shown so far is how the data in the form that has been collected can be submitted to the server, and then your server-side code will process that. We've also shown how you can set the value in the form. So next we'll show how the form is. So we're continuing now looking at how the data-driven form is designed, and the key points here are that we have a panel navigator with two panel cards. The first panel card is just the home screen that describes what the goal of this component is. So this is the first panel card. This panel card has a button on it, and this button makes an AJAX callback to the server and executes an XBasic function called getForm. So this XBasic function is responsible for computing which fields this dynamically data-driven form should display, and this XBasic function then will return the form definition to the component where the form will be rendered. So this is how we make a callback and actually get the form, and then the form itself is actually displayed over here using a viewbox control. So the viewbox control has been configured to interpret the form commands that are sent back from the server, and so we'll go through that a little later. And then the viewbox control also has a control bar in the footer that allows us to submit the form. And then the final piece is another panel card from here to here, which contains an editor set, and inside the editor set we have numerous editors. We have a text box editor, a date editor, a time editor, a list editor, a signature editor, a long text editor, a numeric keypad, and an alphanumeric keypad. So these are the various editors that are used to edit the values in the form itself. So now when we go ahead now and we run the component, we can see now when we press this button over here, we make the AJAX callback, we get the form definition, and we set focus to panel card number 2, and then here's our form. So now let's go take a look at the actual definition of the form. So as we discussed earlier, this button over here makes an AJAX callback, and this AJAX callback is processed by this XBasic function called getForm. So now let's go take a look at the getForm function. So here's my XBasic function called getForm, and you can see that there's a long string here called formDef, which we'll describe a little later. And inside this this string, you can see that we're defining a JSON object. It's actually a JSON array, and then the JavaScript that is returned to the client basically sets the focus to panel card number 2, gets a pointer to the viewbox control, and then populates the viewbox control with the form data, with this variable called underbar data. So the form data itself, the definition of the form, is contained in this array that is sent back to the server. That is sent back to the client, sorry. So now let's basically step through this JavaScript array here, which defines the form. So you can see now that the first item in the array is an object whose type is HTML. So this represents the heading that is displayed at the top of the form. The next item in the array is an object. You can see that it has a value for the group property of group 1, so that means that this control will have a group heading called group 1. This is the icon that we display on the left of the label, which is date value 1, and the type of field is an edit field, and the editor that we're going to use is editor set number 2, and then we're going to use the date editor. The name of the field is date 1, so this means that when the data are submitted, the value in this field will be in the date 1 property, and then here's the message that should be displayed if there's no data in the form. So let's go ahead now and run the form again, and we'll see how this object here is interpreted in the form definition. So we'll go there, display the form, and you can see here's our heading, here's the group 1 displayed over there, and then there's basically the icon and the label, and then when we tap on this, the editor is opened up. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now looking at how this data-driven form is defined, and we've looked now at the first two controls, the first control being the heading, which is of type HTML, and then the next control, which is our date picker, which is a type of, it's an edit field, but it uses the date editor to actually edit the value. Then continuing through here, we have another field here which is a switch, so its type is switch. Then we have another field here which is a time value, so this too is a an edit field. It's basically type is an edit field over there, and the editor that we're going to use is a time editor. Then we have a signature field, its type is ink, and we're going to use the signature editor for that. Then we have the alphanumeric keypad, which is used to edit text value 1, and you can see over here we have the actual settings for the keypad, so this defines properties of the keypad. Then we have a long text field. So to edit the long text field, we use the text area editor. Then we have another heading over here, and now we've changed to group 2 for our group value. This is an integer field, so it's going to have a plus and minus button to the left and the right of the value. So the type here you can see is integer. Then we have a formatted string over here, and we're actually calling a JavaScript function called format string to actually format the value. So if we go back here to our JavaScript functions, we can see here's a JavaScript function that takes an input of value of val and then returns a string that becomes the display string for that control. So so any field here can have a formatter if you want. Then we have a list control, and we can see here that the values in the list control are specified over here in choices. Then we have basically another text box control, and then we have a mobile phone control, and again this time we're using the numeric keypad, and then we're choosing to format this using a formatter function defined over here, and then here's the format of the phone number that was entered in. We have another heading over here. Now we have a new control type here called the radio button, so you can see there it says radio, and here are the choices for the radio button. Here we have another field called dollar amount, and again we're going to use the numeric keypad, but this time we're going to allow 2 decimal places, and we're going to format it with a $sign, commas for the thousand separator, and a period for the decimal point. Here we have finally a numeric keypad that allows negative values. So you can see here we've configured the keyboard to allow negative values, and we've put some custom keys in the keyboard itself. So this is the form definition that got returned by the server. So if you wanted to add new fields, you would just add new objects over here and set the properties on the object to define how the field should look, how the field value should be edited, and what the field name is. So the view box itself actually implements these form commands to display the form, and if we look at the view box, we can see that there's a fairly complex view box layout here which is interpreting all of the different edit types. So you can see here's an edit type called edit, here's integer, and this is basically how the form is rendered. So if you want to go and invent a new edit type, you're certainly welcome to do that. You would do that by going to the form definition over here and then adding a new object with a different type. So maybe you'd give it some arbitrary name, and then you'd go back to the view box over here and you would define a handler for that new control type. So what we've shown in this video is how you can create data-driven forms where the actual list of questions or the list of fields on the form is displayed by making an AJAX callback. Thanks very much for watching.